Hey there, Power Players! I'm Stefan. Welcome back to Art of Nintendo Power. Today we'll be talking about a topic very near and dear to my heart. We'll be talking about the 5 traditional Disney covers from Nintendo Power magazine. 3 of those covers I will be able to show you firsthand because they are all safely in the archive of Art of Nintendo Power. Now, when I say Disney games, I mean first-party properties. We're not talking about things that Disney bought since the publication of Nintendo Power, like... We also won't be covering digital Disney covers because that's just not what we do here. So let's get started. First up, we've got the September-October 1989 issue featuring Ducktales. I am sad to report that likely this cover no longer exists, at least not in its entirety. I did speak to the sculptor of the original piece, and he believes that the original set piece for the background is destroyed. That does mean that the Scrooge McDuck there may be floating around somewhere. I have yet to find him. So that's a big maybe. For those of you curious, yes, this sculpted cover is sculpted by the same artist as most of the other physical covers in my collection, save for the track and field shoes and I think the Super Contra Crab Walker. However, all of the physical covers were created by the same studio of artists, just not necessarily the same artist. It's a shame because I really do love this cover. The longer you stare at it, the more things that you notice. In fact, it took me a while to notice that there was a monkey on the screen and that the screen isn't actually a screen, it's a sculpted monkey just behind a piece of plexiglass. Now, as I said, the sculpted artist claims that this piece no longer exists. However, it is always possible, right? These pieces were sculpted like 30 years ago, and time is a heck of a thing, and occasionally I will get information from artists, and then later on I will find out that that information is incorrect, and that's no fault of the artists themselves, it's just the affect of time. So it's possible that someday we will find the console or the Scrooge McDuck overlay, but the first-hand account from the artist currently is that the piece no longer exists. Next up, we have the July-August 1990 issue for Rescue Rangers. Now, this is a great cover, and some people don't actually realize that this is a mixed media cover, just like the Ducktales cover. The Chippendale there, and of course the Fat Cat in the background, those are all animated pieces, but the light bulb and the bookshelf are handcrafted physical models. Having said that, this is another example of a piece that I wish I had part of, but so far, no luck. It's also entirely possible that the Chippendale and Fat Cat were pieces of key art provided from the Walt Disney Company, but I also thought that about the Aladdin cover, and it turned out to be incorrect. So the animated pieces may be out there somewhere, I just have not come across them yet. Unfortunately, by this time they had already stopped crediting the cover artists, so we may never know. Now for a big jump in time, the next traditional Disney cover is Volume 36, Darkwing Duck. Now, as you can see, the original art for this particular cover is directly behind me. This cover is a little bit different than the rest of the traditional covers that were all painted, or rather that were airbrushed, because this does involve a cell. So the line work for Darkwing was drawn and then printed on a piece of acetate, or like overhead film, like you would have had, you know, in junior high. Wow, that really dated me. Some of you would have had overhead projectors in junior high. If I know my demographic correctly, most of you did. Anyway, so rather than the line work for Darkwing being part of the airbrushed piece, he was printed on a piece of acetate, and then the color work for the airbrush piece was behind him. However, that does include all of the additional line work. So all of the brickwork, all of the cracks in the pavement, everything, that is all part of the background. The other things that were not included as part of the background were the yow and the thonk And talking to the artist, who again wishes to remain nameless due to privacy, he provided those pieces separately and then just allowed the Nintendo art department to decide how to place them. So that's why if you look at the framed piece behind me, the Yao and the Thonk comic exclamatory pieces are on separate pieces of paper. One other thing that I want to show you, and I'll show it to you here, is that this piece came with a color comp, or rather a test piece, if you will, that the artist sketched in colored pencil before he painted the final. And this thing is almost as beautiful as the painted cover. He pretty much didn't have to repaint it. He could have sent that color comp to Nintendo and it would have been fine. It's just, I've never seen, I see color comps occasionally, but I've never seen one with work that is just so immaculate. It really shows the dedication of the artist when their color comps are almost as good, or sometimes better than the finished piece. And this entire piece that I'm showing you now was done in colored pencil. It's just amazing. Next up we have one of my all-time favorite Nintendo Power covers. I am also fortunate to have this piece in the archive, and I will be showing you some B-roll of it as I talk. That is the Volume 44 bonus issue of The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. Not only is this an incredible render by the incredibly talented Dan McGowan, but it's a fold-out cover that's double wide, and it's just exquisite. The other thing that is fascinating to me is that a lot of times you'll see the painted covers are larger than the published piece. Oftentimes it's because drawing to scale or painting to scale is really difficult. The smaller that you are painting, the harder it is, especially for fine detail. So the idea is to paint larger so that you can do fine detail larger, and then it shrinks down for the publication. This is not the case for this cover. Dan McGowan painted this to scale. Like, it's almost exactly to scale, and it's just, his detail is just absolutely incredible. Not only that, but like, he was not a first-party Disney artist. In fact, what's crazy about this to me, knowing that, you know, part of my background, if you don't know, is that I worked for Disney for about 9 years, and so it was incredibly surprising to me that Disney didn't provide this art. These were like third-party contract work-for-hire artists that created really on-model stuff. So again, hats off to Dan McGowan. Unfortunately, you'll notice that I am saying his name and I am giving him credit, and that is because Dan is no longer with us. These pieces were acquired from his estate. Unfortunately, he left us after a courageous bout with cancer. But yeah, I was absolutely floored to be in the presence of this piece. You know, I cried when I saw it. It was it was something. And just the absolute talent of this man is, I can't say enough about him. And I only wish that I was able to meet him and thank him for painting some of the most iconic covers for this magazine. As we do more videos about covers in my archive, I will be sharing more of Dan's work with you, and every piece is just heart-stopping. Absolutely heart-stopping. This piece is also entirely airbrush. Unlike the Darkwing, there is no acetate involved. This is 100% airbrush work. Just chills, absolute chills. Lastly, we have the Volume 55 cover for Aladdin, a spectacular cover. This is not Dan McGowan. This is actually the same artist that painted the Darkwing cover. I have 5 or 6 of his pieces, so we'll see some more of his too. Again, for privacy, we've decided not to name him. However, I am working on getting an interview with him where we'll at least be able to talk to him about his process. And he and Dan were painting at around the same time, so we'll be able to kind of, despite the fact that we can't talk to Dan, we may be able to talk to this artist about his process, and it would be a similar process because they were both airbrush artists. So yeah, look for that in the future. I hope that pans out. It's something I'm working on. But anyway, back to the Aladdin piece. This piece is funny because sometimes when I'm looking for things, I just happen upon them, or I happen upon the artist or someone involved in the magazine and they just like have stuff. This piece in particular, Aladdin is one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo. Again, I have a background with Disney, so this particular game was also near and dear to my heart. This project, this cover. I loved this cover as a kid. I love it today as an adult. I was actively searching out this cover, and with the Disney covers, I thought I would have some luck because I could, you know, open my Rolodex and try to figure out where this art came from. So in looking for this and reaching out to people that I knew at the company, that's how I actually discovered that none of these covers were Disney artists. But after that, I was like, okay, well, I looked for this for probably like a solid 6 months of like every day actively trying to find it. And at some point I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna find this thing. It is what it is. I'll move on to something else. Literally a week later, I came upon this artist, not knowing that he painted this particular cover. This was after we had talked on the phone and decided that this was something that we wanted to go forward with and make a deal of rehoming some stuff to the archive. And he, as we were going through each of his, you know, he was texting me, and every time he was, as each one of these pictures popped up, you know, my eyes got a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. And then this was the very last thing he sent me, and it was just sort of like, oh yeah, and this too. And I lost my mind. I freaked out. Like, but it just goes to show that like some things, like many things in life, will come to you as soon as you stop looking for them, and because that's exactly what happened in this case. So yeah, it's a great story of just things falling into place when you least expect them. So as you can see, this piece again is completely done in airbrush. I actually also own the pencils for this particular cover, which is essentially the line art that he drew on tissue paper, or it's like a vellum, to create the stencil to then paint this piece. So I also have the line art, which I will show you here. I have to be a little bit choosy. Framing is expensive, and I don't do things like Patreon or that kind of thing, so all of it comes out of my own personal budget. Maybe someday when I have 100,000 subscribers, you guys can help me frame, but for now, framing is very expensive, and so I can't frame everything. So you will see some framed line work in the future, but that's generally when I only own the line work. So if I don't have the finished painting, then I will frame the line work. But if I have the finished painting, I'm not going to frame the line work, because that's just, you know, a few $100s here, a few $100s there that could be allocated to more art rather than framing. So I have plenty of line work already framed, enough to show the process, and like, this is line work, and this is what it was used for, and this was how it was used. But I'm probably not going to frame any more of it unless I do find more line work in which I don't own the finished painting. But typically when I do find line work, it's alongside the painting. Like, I'll get that as a package deal. Well, I think that about does it for this week on Art of Nintendo Power. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I always love hearing from you. And while you're there, why don't you tell me which of these 5 covers is your favorite and why? If you like what I'm doing, please, please, please like and subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you don't miss any of my videos. You know, I don't even think I've made a I have not yet made $100 in ad revenue. So yeah, this definitely is not a money-making venture. Although someday it would be nice if, I don't know, this could at least like help me subsidize the actual art collection, because otherwise it just makes me hemorrhage money, which I'm happy to do. This is my passion. This is what I do. But someday if I could get a following strong enough to actually help subsidize the acquiring of art, or maybe helping with the framing, which is god-awfully expensive, then that would be cool. So yeah, please, if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe, hit that notification, and otherwise I will see you next time on Art of Nintendo Power. Bye.